A couple of months ago, on a windy evening in New York, I met with Fatima Bhutto, a prolific writer and poet whose latest book is New Kings of the World. It examines how mass culture today is less Disney and Hollywood than it is K-pop and Bollywood, signaling the end of one country's dominance and in its place an offering of a mix of Eastern ideas. I'm James Chau with Fatima Bhutto.
Hi, I'm Fatima Bhutto and I'm the author of New Kings of the World, and I'm here with James Chau and the China Current.
You write about this vast culture coming from outside of the Western world, and towards the end of the book, which is really interesting, you start talking about China.
Yes.
Where do you see China coming in the future?
Well, what's interesting is I started to write New Kings of the World in 2016. If I was writing it today in 2019, I would have had China as a main pillar. But it comes across in this book as a shadow, as the great big shadow looming over these cultural industries coming out of Asia.
What do you think of China?
Well, as a Pakistani, China holds a mythic role in our country's imagination because of its friendship with Pakistan, but also because we are in the neighborhood, and so we watch China keenly. We're interested in China and what they're doing, whether it's economics or foreign policy. And certainly we should be watching them for culture too. We have do you know this? Pak Chini Bhai Bhai, have you ever heard that?
Yes, I have.
That's tell us
what it's about.
It's a famous expression. It means Pakistan and China are brothers. So we think of ourselves closely to China. And I think that's one of the exciting things about Asia right now. We are all closely connected, but some of us more closely than others, maybe. And certainly with One Belt, One Road, that relationship is deepening and changing, and it's going to be interesting to watch in the coming years.
You talk about Pakistan, China, and your grandfather was president of Pakistan. In fact, I think there's a picture of your father with Do Enlai, isn't there?
Oh,
He was there in the premiere.
Yes, he brought all his children to China on the state visit. And there are pictures of them absolutely with Chou Enlai, and they spent, I think, 3 months traveling around China, visiting different cities and trying to learn.
What are you telling the world in this book? If cultures like Bollywood and K-pop are the new kings of the world, how should we be anticipating our future? And would China then be a king of the world, or maybe even an emperor of the world?
Yeah, well, the point of New Kings of the World is to say that we don't live in a world where there is one center for anything anymore, and certainly not culture. We live in a multipolar world. And if you're Asian, you live in a really exciting time. There's so many great things coming out of Asia, whether India or China or Pakistan or Turkey or Korea. And I do think that the last century was an American century. It was where America dominated culture, whether that's movies, TV, music, you name it. Today's century doesn't look like that. So we are going to have new kings. Will there be an emperor? Maybe. I think we'll have to watch and see. It's a really exciting time.
It would be nice if we were all kings.
Yes.
If not one culture or country was dominant. It doesn't need to be like that, does it?
No, it doesn't. And I think as people, we are naturally democratic about our cultural tastes. We're curious about everyone's culture. We don't hem ourselves in by national ideas or by borders. So as people, we're listening to music from South America, we're looking at fashion from Africa, we're interested in Middle Eastern food. We're really open and receptive to other people's tastes, stories, and curiosities.
I want to ask you one more question. Given your foresight and your world viewpoint, what do you see? Is it possible that we can all share in China's growth, that it's not restricted to its own benefit, but it can be shared in a modern way where it becomes inclusive? What would you tell people around the world about how to jump onto that bandwagon?
Well, I was asked today, we're standing here in New York, and I was asked in America, should we not be anxious about following Chinese cultural trends? And I said, well, why? We followed American cultural trends for decades. Why should we be anxious? Of course, politics is coded into culture, and every cultural industry has their own messages, their own stories, and their own history. But I think we can be discerning audiences. I think we can be entertained, while also learning about the countries who are entertaining us and asking questions of their products. So that's what I'm hopeful for. I'm hopeful for a wider array of stories. We need more stories, and we certainly need more Asian stories. And will China bring the rest of us into their stories? They're already financing Hollywood films, aren't they? So they're already a part of the American story. Bollywood isn't financing American films yet. Will they then have to because China's doing it? I mean, I think this is part of what's so exciting about the time we live in today. It's all in flux, and where it falls could be good, it could be confusing, but it's going to be new regardless.
How about writing a book about China one day?
Oh, I would love to. I would need to spend a lot more time in China learning about China. But when I was finishing New Kings of the World, it did strike me that China was the missing piece, and that there was so much to study and to investigate and to watch about China. So I am looking and watching with great interest. Thank you, James.
I am James Chau. You're watching The China Current. Follow us on social media @The China Current.